Wait. 50 seconds, okay, Kimberly? 50 seconds, okay. Okay. I want to call the May 6, 2019 Phoenix City Council meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Councilor Vermillion.
Here.
Councilor Snyder. Councilor Warren.
Here.
Councilor Crawford.
Here.
Councilor Baker.
Here.
Mayor Luz.
Here.
Councilor Westover and Councilor Snyder are excused absent.
Okay, thank you. Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Well, we have a number of presentations this evening, and the first one is going to be given by Julie Brown of RVTD. Come on up. Julie is a chairman, right? Of
General Manager.
General Manager, RVTD. She's the top woman over there. We're pleased to have her.
Let's see if I can fit in a slot here. So for the record, my name is Julie Brown. I'm the General Manager of Rogue Valley Transportation District. Your Honor and council members, thank you so much for inviting me to come out this evening and speak to you. Usually, we have made rounds over the years, and then it kind of fizzled out where councilors weren't really interested in what Rogue Valley Transportation District is doing. Although now that we're growing and we're being able to provide better service to everyone, invitations are starting to come forward, and I'm glad to come out anytime, and my staff also are happy to come and do presentations anytime you feel you would like to have us. So,
Thank you.
so I'm not familiar with this setup, so I'm going to hopefully get through this okay. All right.
Good.
There we go. So I have provided all of you with a packet, and inside that packet are a few things. One is my business card, which has my cell phone number and also my desk number. You're welcome to use it anytime you have a question. I've also included the slide deck that you're going to see this evening. A newsletter that all of you should have received in your mailboxes, which if you're inside our district boundaries, and this just talks about some of our programs that are happening. But the most important piece is this that you're seeing. At the bottom, there's attached a little card that looks like a credit card. It's actually our Touch Pass card to ride the bus. It has 6 rides loaded on it. And so we welcome you to try out the service, find out what it's all about, and you might even meet some of your constituents who are using our service. And also there's a ride guide that kind of tells you. So I just wanted to tell you what was in your packet and what that entails, so that you could look at that at your leisure.
Hey, Julie, if I bring my kids with me, there's 6 rides, can all 3 of us use this?
So children under the age of 9 ride free with a paying adult. So there is fare on that. So if you're the adult, then the children can ride free. If the children are older, like teenagers, then you could use it, yes, also for them.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, so tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about the services that RVTD provides in your community. And the first slide shows that between the year 2017 and 18, RVTD provided $1,100,000 1,990 transit trips. Now, those are one-way trips, so if you cut that in half, that's kind of what a round trip but not everybody does round trips. In addition to that, we provided 88,451 paratransit rides. And paratransit is our ADA service that is required by the federal government, and we provide service 3/4 of a mile on either side of any fixed route. So any route that you see running with RVTD, 3/4 of a mile on each side of that, we have to provide door-to-door or curb-to-curb service for people that have disabilities or not able to walk to a bus stop. And I don't know if you want to interrupt me or if you want to wait till the end.
How many of the door-to-door services do you offer?
So the door-to-door service, you mean how many clients? So this number here, the 88,000, is a couple different programs, but the one service, I believe we have 3,500 clients in our district that use this service. And it might be a little bit higher than that, but the last time I checked, that was the number. In addition to that, some of these rides, these demand response, are other programs that are under our paratransit services that are for people that are developmentally disabled. So we provide trips to and from work, and so they're counted in that. So, and I don't know that unique number, but I could certainly find out for you.
Now, this is a good example of the rides that you provide for a woman who's in RV South at the mobile home park, and she works at the Domicile area for 4 days a week. She's blind, and the link or the van comes up, picks her up, and brings her to work 4 times a week, 10 hours a day. Without that, she couldn't get to work and provide services for the veterans over
I
there.
used
So,
to work with somebody
good
that was
example.
blind in the same building, and he had the same service.
Yeah.
Right.
He was blind.
Works well.
And it is very important, and I'll kind of touch on that as we go through some of the things that this touches. RVTD provided 933,391 miles of revenue service last year, and it's equivalent to, that should have said miles, excuse me, and 62,602 hours of service. So this is some demographic material that we have used before in our newsletter. You might have seen it. We've also used it in some other presentations. But it kind of talks about our survey that we did in 2018. This is a passenger survey. So we had people that we asked them questions. They had to fill out a questionnaire. And this kind of breaks it down. It's a little bit fuzzy on this slide deck, but if you look up at the top, it talks about their origin or destination. 24% of them, we don't really know where they were going. 35% were saying they were going home. 7% to the doctor, 7% to school, 12% to shopping, 15% to, I think that's a doctor's, supposed to be a doctor's bag, but no. Let's see, yes, that's what no, it's not. So I'm not, oh, it must be work, sorry. I don't know what a briefcase is anymore. It's now a backpack, so I'm a little confused here. Anyway, this is just one snapshot of some of the information that we gathered from it. 23% of the people said that if the bus service is not available, they would not make their trip, or they would have to depend on really somebody else to take them, and most of the time, that's very difficult for a lot of people. 60% of our riders do not have a working vehicle or one that's available in their household. And that was kind of staggering when you started listening to that kind of demographic. You start to realize that there really is a difference here about our riders. A lot of our riders are transit dependent. They have no other means. And this survey kind of tickled some of that out. 11% of the riders were age 18 and under, and 9% of the riders were 65 and above. So when you look at it, then they break it down to ethnicity, rider ethnicity, and white, 71%, Hispanic or Latino, 12%, black, 4%, other, 4%. I guess some people don't know what they are or didn't want to tell us. 3% American Indian, 2% Asian, and there's, again, 4% that preferred not to answer at all. So that kind of breaks down who our riders, the demographics on that. And then it talked about employed. 44% of our our riders were employed, 17% were unemployed, 13% disabled, 7% retired, university students 7%, high school students 6%, veterans 4%, and homemaker 3%. So when you look at this, most of our people are working, but I'm guessing that a lot of them are in the lower wage scale or working part-time because they're doing something else in addition to that. And again, it looks like nearly half of our riders' household income was $15,000 or less. And that's kind of a tricky question, I think, when you ask that, because a lot of people really don't know.
You have a lot of kids mixing around too with zero income.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, and students, but I also believe, I mean, so one of the things that we made our staff do is ride the bus and do the survey with them. We sat one-on-one and worked on the survey with these people. And I did it too. One of the things that was staggering to me was how many people were working 2 jobs, 2 part-time jobs, 3 part-time jobs. They were going to school, working. It was just really heartbreaking in some ways to listen to some of their struggles. On the customer satisfaction, we talked about bus cleanliness, and people were satisfied. 4.45 out of 5 said the buses were clean. We strive really hard to make this a nice service. The driver customer service, 4.3. And then the Touch Pass fare, which is that new electronic card that we're talking about, 4.2% said they were highly satisfied. One of the things that's really nice about the Touch Pass is that once you get it, a lot of social services will buy that card, get the card and load some rides on there for their clients, and then after that, let's say the client goes to work, they can actually go online and load it themselves, or if they need additional help from somebody. I know I personally have bought bus passes for some of my family members that are younger to try to get them to use the bus, and it's just a really nice thing, and when you start going through it, you can just actually load your fare and you never have to go to a window or go somewhere to get a bus pass. So it's pretty nice. Let's see, where else? 97% of the riders indicated they felt safe. And one of the things that we did some polling a few years back to ask people what their perception of transit was. And a lot of people, especially women, said they didn't feel safe using the bus service. And a lot of people have used it in metropolitan areas, and I agree, it's kind of a scary situation sometimes. I can tell you that our buses are very safe. Our drivers are very aware, and I think that this was a good indicator of it. And then, let's see, where are we? Pardon? Yes, all of our buses are camera equipped. We record everything that's going on. All of the drivers are radio dispatched so they can talk to anyone at any given time. And we try to stay highly aware of what's going on in our situations. Moving along, I wanted to show you the daily passenger activity by stop for Medford, Phoenix, and Talent. The little circles indicate kind of what that looks like, and in the back, on the last slide, we'll kind of talk about the passenger activity in your area, but if you look at Talent and Phoenix, the dots are pretty big in a couple areas, and it's a real big indicator of our daily passenger activity. And then on the right, well, maybe it's your, yeah, I guess it's your right side, you look at the activity by stop on our system-wide, and so that kind of gives you an indicator of what it looks like. Although this isn't to scale, it kind of gives you an idea of what's happening in our district.
I'm trying to figure out how many people that can actually use the bus on a regular basis. How many clients do you have? I kind of figure that like 165 people that use the bus on a regular basis, a little more than the school time. The kids are using it.
Sure.
A little less, when school's out.
So you do have Armadillo,
Yeah.
that a lot of students come here to your community and use our bus system. That's their main form of transportation. But I can tell you that it's really mixed. And we're hoping that we can eventually drill down a little bit closer to getting better demographics as far as who those passengers are. The Touch Pass is going to give us part of that, being able to see if they provide us with the information, their age, that they're using the passes. So we'll have more data as we go along. We have just started really having a good system where we can count people on and off the bus.
It kind of feels like about 2,000 people in Nevada that use the service. So going to work and back to work, going to school, coming back to school. But do you have any idea how many people in the valley use the bus on a regular basis? Back to school?
I don't. I mean, as far as individuals, I have no idea. It's really kind of hard to, the closest we can get to giving anybody that answer, because that's a question that's asked all the time.
Yeah.
Good questions. Is through that surveying. So as we were able to drill down better on the surveying, we get a better idea of what they're using the trips for. I don't think we'll ever get to the level that we'll be able to tell by stop. Might get close, but sophistication isn't there yet. So this is our general fund revenues for fixed route service. And so if you happen to be a person who picks up RVTD's budget from last year, and this is based on 2018, you'll see that our budget is a lot bigger than the $9,902,000. The reason for that is that we have a couple other programs that we also have under RVTD's umbrella, and the revenue streams are usually segregated pretty darn tight, because they're either federal or state programs and they can only be used for certain things. So I'm going to go through the revenues quickly. The charges for services are the charges internally that we use, and that is revenue that comes from one department to another. And again, when I talk about those different programs, a lot of times there's pieces in there. One program, maybe they're allowed to buy bus passes, so we charge them for those bus passes. That's what those charges for services are. The property tax, the permanent levy, is what we receive locally, have been from, I think it was 1978 was when it passed. And it is 17 cents per thousand. So we bring in approximately $2.5 million, almost it's about 2.5. It's getting a little closer to 2.6, depending on how much the county increases your assessment. The special levy is a 5-year levy that RVTD went out for in 2016. That is an additional 13 cents that we're garnering on property taxes. Comes to 1.9. That will expire in 2020. I keep wanting to say 19, sorry. The state payroll assessment, the $236,395, is the state of Oregon's employees do not pay payroll tax to the state, or the state doesn't pay the portion of payroll taxes. Instead, they have what they call a mass transit payroll tax internally. That's the amount of money that our community gets, and that is broken up across the state. Most areas get a small state payroll assessment. The federal and state grants are grants that we have been able to get from the federal government. So the federal government gives us $4 million every year for operating. So that's what we call our 5307. In addition, there's some state money. That state piece, that federal and state grant, is about to grow. And it is going to grow by about $3 million. And which has to be used for new services only, and is a payroll tax to the employee. So some of you have seen that on your checks starting last July. That money will be given to us in November. So we'll be able to actually increase services. The capitalization of maintenance, or the STVG, I'm sure your mayor has talked to you about. That is the money that the MPO has given RVTD. Over the years, we just made an agreement at the MPO level that it's going down to $700,000 a year, with the idea that as stable funding comes into RVTD, that is actually going to be reduced. We know it. We're willing to have that conversation and keep moving it forward. This year, the difference between the $700,000 and $941 will be put into a fund that can be used for bicycle and pedestrian projects. The investment income is interest that we're actually receiving from the LGIP, which is the local government investment program. It's money, our property taxes, that goes into that fund, and it's invested, and that is the income we get from that. Miscellaneous revenues, $169,770 is probably from advertising, also the selling of natural gas and some other miscellaneous things. So that's our total budget this last year that was proposed. We will have the actuals at the end of the year. And I think we're going to come in actually a little bit under than that in our revenues, but we'll see. These are a few of the programs that RVTD has had around. Gus Rides the Bus is a program that I started when I first came to the district 23 years ago. I was working in the planning department. That is a program that goes out to the schools, teaches children about using the bus, that it's one of the places where if you're ever out on the street and you need help, you can wave the bus down. The driver is very aware of children doing that. And so we teach them the fundamentals of safety on the bus and how to use the service. The Go Vets is a new service that we just started in this last 2 years. It is a grant that we got from the federal government and also from the state to help veterans come back into society and really learn how to be part of their communities. A lot of times they're suffering from situations that they've witnessed. They have post-traumatic stress syndrome. What we do is a one-on-one skill building with them and then group building. And so we actually have a veteran that we hired, and actually he just re-enlisted, so he's going back in. But he has been the key to that program of working with vets, and he's been working with a lot of the veterans program. Clean Air that you see on the right-hand side was something through the Council of Governments, the Rogue Valley Council of Governments. This was an art project that they did with kids in the school and actually got their artwork put on the side of the bus. They are working with employers in the community, and their focus has been reducing DMT in the valley. And we have lots of other programs, but these were just 3 I thought you might be interested in. This piece here I wanted to share with you, the Get On Board Rogue Valley Transit Now. That was our political action committee that went out and actually had a Facebook presence during the time that we were working on our Measure 15141. And the reason we put these on here were they're really good stories. These were stories of people that were actually using the bus and telling their story. And so my senior planner thought that it might be something that you might be interested in just seeing. These are some of the people these are the faces that use our bus system. In addition to that, we have bicycle racks on our buses, and so there's a lot of people that bike partway to their jobs or ride the bus home with their bike on the front because they're tired. But all of our buses have 3 racks on the front. So when you're talking about, Mayor, when you're talking about your children, it's a good way to be able to go down to Ashland, put your bikes on there, go all the way down to Ashland, ride the bikes back, or vice versa. It's a great thing. If the racks are full and there isn't a lot of riders on the bus, we allow people to bring the bikes inside if it's not during peak time. And then I wanted to talk real quickly about our 2040 Transit Master Plan. This is a plan that we've been working on for the last couple of years. Your staff have been participating along with some other community members from this area to really help us figure out what it is Southern Oregon would like. And it's a big area to cover, and there's a lot of opinions on what they want to see. But this is kind of where we've gotten to. Our vision talks about what's important in the community, our coordination, what we feel about the economy, the environment, and our service quality. And so these are just little bullet pieces that the board has kind of vetted from the different, we have a public committee that has been meeting. We have a technical advisory committee, a public advisory committee, and then of course we've also have our board. And so they've been working through this, and this is the vision that they've come up with. And so she included that. Our master plan is almost done, at least the first phase of it. And the reason we've kind of fast-paced this is that we cannot access our transit money from the state until you have a plan. And so we've been able to get our first tier done, and I'll show you a little piece of that. I'm not sure if it's this or I'll talk about it, but I think it's in the back. The other thing that we're doing during this master plan is really looking at how well is how density housing being served by transit. So they've gone in and they've taken all of the TAZs and looking at that and the urban growth boundaries and RVT service and try to tease out what the demographics look. And in this, we're able to figure out where the best place is to put the bus routes. The other piece of the new funding is that you have to serve low income. And so we are really concentrating on where we don't serve the low income and trying to come up with ideas on how to do that. So unfortunately, like all fundings, this comes with strings attached, and you have to try to weave every single piece of it in together in your plan when you're asking for this money. Included in that is making sure that we provide service to school children in the grades 9 through 12. So we have to show that we're serving them either with a bus pass program or actually serving the schools themselves. And the good part is that most of the areas we are serving those, but we will have to look at those and make decisions. But with this, how well is density housing being served by transit in 2018? It says 71% of the low or the high density housing is being served within a quarter mile of transit. That's pretty good. Is it the best? No. Are we serving our bedroom communities? No. And so that's one of the frustrations. We are though trying to serve the most people at this point and have been, but I think that you're going to see as I go forward, we're going to branch out just a little bit. So presently Phoenix is, the service is Route 10, which comes every 20 minutes on the weekdays and 30 minutes on Saturdays. The Route 10 has the highest level of service in the RVTV system. Best bang for the buck. And that's why we keep increasing the frequency. The average weekly ridership is 1,823 passengers, and the highest, and that's in your community, the highest is between Fern Valley and Highway 99. Again, we have the bus pass program for Armadillo, and then the Valley Lift, and you also have a special transportation advisory committee member for Phoenix who serves our board in helping us make decisions about elderly and disabled transportation. And I think this, is that it? Okay. There is one piece I just wanted to let you know in the long-range plan. There is a circulator, and it's in the later stages. So right now we're getting estimates on how much money we're going to receive from the state, and we're trying to figure out our routing. We're going to be adding 2 new routes in July, one that's going to serve out on the east side of Medford, which has been paying taxes for years and doesn't have any service. And then there's going to be another piece of it. So that piece is going to be first. The part that is difficult for us is we have a system that everything comes into Medford, and it's a hub and spoke, goes out from there. We don't have any transfer points anywhere else in the system, and that's about to change. And this first lift to the east side of Medford is going to have a transfer point. So we're going to have to get out there and teach people how to use a new system, and they may have to transfer 2 times to get where they're going. But it's the first piece that we need to do to become larger. And then the piece that is in the plans is a circulator in the Talent area. And some of the vision on that is maybe it's a circulator that serves Phoenix and Talent and goes back and forth there, and then comes into our express route. And so there will be an express route that's going to hit I-5 and never come down 99. It doesn't change any of the transportation, the 20-minute service you have now. It just will give people that are just going to Ashland for work from the Medford area a chance to get down there, and then also the people from Ashland will get to Medford. And it's going to be a commuter route that only goes a few times a day. But we're going to try that because it's one of the highest things asked. We've had requests for Sunday services, we've had requests for later services. My feeling on it is there's a better way for us to provide transit, and we need to start thinking a little bit outside of your traditional box. One of the things that you'll see is a smaller vehicle. So we're going to size our vehicle to the community that it's needed in. Maybe have larger vehicles or smaller. We're going to go to more of a demand response in areas, and I'll give you an example. Jacksonville, we run a bus out there. They're part of the MPO area. We receive federal funds for them, so we serve them. Is that the best way to be serving them? No. So if we went to a smaller vehicle that was demand response where they called and said, I would like to come into town, then we run a vehicle out there at certain times of day. So you're going to see a lot of changes. We're very conscious of how we spend our money and how we're going to provide the service. And so the other piece of this is Uber and Lyft. Our piece is taxi services are piece of it. It's a whole transportation system, not just ours. So that's kind of a real quick, wasn't that quick, overview of RBT. Sorry, I took up probably more than my time.
My question here, and you kind of hit it a few minutes ago, is you guys are going to expand routes. You talked about the bus. But how do you determine that you're going to go to East Metro? Maybe the bus riders from East Metro will be negligible. How do you decide after you put a route in place? Because I think this one isn't open. The bus is about $1.1 million. And
Sure.
$25 an hour for a bus driver, and we only got very low ridership. So you have to cancel that route. How do you do it when you determine beforehand, when you hit that mark, you say, hey, it's been 36 months, it's time to go that route, it's not working, cancel.
So 6 months in, we've already talked about this internally. 6 months in, we're going to take a really hard dive into what's happening in East Medford or any of the new routes and saying, is this working? Now, anybody that runs transit knows that it takes a period of time. And it takes two things. One is marketing. If you don't market it and people don't know it's there, they're not going to use it. The second piece of it is, we have to respond to the people that are asking for it. Absolutely. And there's been a huge ask for East Medford, and one of the cries is, we've been paying taxes for a year, we deserve this. We did have service out there when I first started working with the transit system. It was high ridership, but it was students, and it was because there was no bus service. Medford School District cut the service, so kids were riding the bus. So we know that it may not work. We'll look at it at 6 months, we'll look at it again here. But again, it gets down to, if this isn't working, we're not going to send them a bus out there in your neighborhood long term. And so then it'll go back to right sizing or a demand response. The other piece is there's going to be a demand response service that we think we're getting a grant for in Ashland that's going to have a smaller van, and that'll be a good example to see if it works.
And then, if you look at the amount of budget, if you didn't include your capital improvements, like your buses, and you're putting like 18 buses, if you look at total resources that go into the budget, it's many, many thousands of dollars per person that's getting on the bus. I don't know what number if you got $8,000 to $16,000 per person, it's a lot of money. You guys ever think, you mentioned it, Uber and Lyft and so ever think about, hey, taking that money and saying this route's not going to pan out, let's just give them Uber credits or taxi credits. There's not anything. But the part is like they're going there, provide the service, be reimbursed by the money.
So a couple of things. One is our federal partners. They expect us to provide a level of public transit services. With that, all of our drivers are vetted through background checks, et cetera. They're not doing that in the Uber service. And so one of the things that the federal government's going to say to you is, if you're going to do that, if you're going to contract it out, they have to meet these certain requirements. So far, my conversations with Uber and Lyft haven't gone well. They don't want to impose that on their drivers. So there's strings attached to that. So it's not as easy as saying, we can just contract this out. A good example, though, is our paratransit services. We do contract that out, and they're held to a higher level, and their pay isn't as much as our union drivers.
Maybe you get like a taxi dispatch service or what your head service is. When someone's calling, you like a taxi service for that very few amount of people, and
Sure.
Or they just need a ride.
I think the biggest thing, though, is taxpayers are going to look at us, and we're not here to displace also private industry. So we have to be very careful there.
No, I did go to the food bank. I started to talk to people. And a couple, there's two complaints about the bus. That's what I got to tell you. But one was people hopping on the bus, and they get in the bus like, not my car. The same guy forget these cars all the time. And the bus driver, what's this? Hop on. That was number one. And the same gentleman said sometimes dogs are getting on that shouldn't be getting on because they're not service dogs. Those are two complaints that's about the food bank.
Sure. So I'll give you really quick. Service animals, we can ask two questions. Is this a service animal? If they answer yes, we have to believe them. They don't have to be certified. We ask them what task it's performed, and believe me, they know what task it's supposed to perform. So they tell you that, we have to let them on. Now, the only time we can police it on that is if the dog misbehaves, then we can ban the dog, not the person, from using our service. The second thing, as far as fare, my employees answer to me, and I'm a very compassionate person. And what I tell them is, there are times people don't have fare, don't bust their chops on fare because the return on the fare box is not high. But if you have somebody that's always doing that, mark them on the video, and we will have a personal conversation with them. So we don't enforce fare evasion as heavy as some of your other metropolitan areas, but it's coming.
My last question will come from the council. It regards your temporary levy on taxpayers. Currently, everyone's paying 1/4 of 1% of all they earn to the tax to help out the actual the business. I know right now you can only use that for expansion of services, but you can work with you can possibly get away with it at some point in time and use money for local matches, for federal state grants, if you guys get $1 million grants, if you use that to match it, that will offset the cost of other areas. You don't have to use it for maintenance or continuation services in certain circumstances. So I'm hoping that we don't have to have another tax on citizens, but there's some way where we can put those items into play that the $1 million you're going to get from the new tax would help you guys offset some of the current expenses instead of doing another tax levy on citizens. That's my 2 cents.
And I can tell you I'm on that. Already I'm forming the question to our legislators. The money can be used to maintain services, but only the new services. That's how the rules are now. But at some point, the money is going to become stagnant as far as you're going to have increasing costs and you're not going to be able to fund them. And so we're hoping to get that language changed in HB 2017 maybe this next biennium. But the piece that I think is important is, and I told this to our community, it's a three-legged stool. You have your federal commitment, now we have a state commitment. We also have to have a local commitment. And when I first became general manager, I used to come to all the city councils, and that's why I quit going, because I asked them for money. Said, can you help fund this? I need some more local dollars. Can you throw in $50,000? Can you throw in, $10,000? What can you give RVTD? And the answer was they couldn't. Their budgets are constrained as much as everybody else's. So having the property tax owners give a little bit, and 13 cents isn't much. We're looking a lot more for some other things coming up in the near future. But the money's getting tighter and tighter. And so I'm aware of it. I think what we're going to try to do is not ask for as much, not go for that 13 cents. It may be a little bit less. Right now, the other money is only coming from the working. The 1/10 of 1% is from anybody who's employed. So we're hoping that, when we come to the property tax owners, that it's a smaller amount.
Most funds should go over as wage increases, wage increase, when money can be pooled, increase, greater more funds in it.
We hope, but if our state government keeps, sorry, I'm going to get political here, but if the state government keeps going down the road they're going, and, it's based on employment, if we start squeezing the business owners and the corporations, they're going to start laying people off because that's the only thing they can do. And so it's a push and shove, unfortunately, and it's painful.
Question?
I like that there's smaller vehicles involved, because sometimes you see those buses with one or no people going by, so I like that idea, smaller.
Julie Brown, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me, and
Good job.
anytime,
Thank you
please
very
just let us know. Thank you.
Come up, Rachel.
Our next presentation is by Rachel Lanigan. She's with RH2 Engineering, and they did our master water plan and the management and conservation plan. Are you going to cover those one at a time, Rachel?
Yeah, I kind of had them all grouped together, and I was going to do the water management and conservation plan first, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Swapping them around.
Okay, great.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. My name is Rachel Lanigan. I'm an engineer with RH2 Engineering. For context, I grew up here in the Rogue Valley, and I live here now. My parents live in Phoenix, so I'm no stranger to the city. I've been working on the water master plan for about a year and the water management conservation plan. Two separate plans. They're both required by the state. Just of note, as of January 2018, the state now requires a seismic resilience plan to also be done with your master plan and submitted at the same time. So that wasn't part of our original plan, but we've entered into contracting, and we're going to get started on that soon. We're going to do it concurrently with the City of Talent, try to have cost savings and get that done as fast as we can, so we can submit these to the state.
I think we were green for that, right? Correct.
So before I jump in, there are lots of acronyms I throw out, and I just want to make sure those are clear. So MWC, Medford Water Commission. TAP is the Talent Ashland Phoenix Water Supply System. MG, millions of gallons. MGD, millions of gallons per day. ERU, equivalent residential unit. It's kind of a term we use for water use. Average day demand, ADD, average day demand. MDD, maximum day demand, which is usually the hottest day of the summer. BPS, booster pump station. So just to get those out of the way. So I'll start with the water management and conservation plan. These are required by water utilities in the state that hold water rights. Depending on your size, there are different requirements, and depending on whether you're actively pursuing water rights, there are different requirements. Now, do you all have a copy of these that you've had before? Yeah. All right. The city's last water management conservation plan was in 2009. These are typically required every 10 years with a progress update every 5 years. So this would have been a progress report, but it's been 10 years, so it's a full new plan. There are 4 chapters that are required by the state, and I'll go through each of these real quickly. So chapter 1 is sort of a summary of your existing system. I'll get into the infrastructure side when we talk about the master plan. But from the water management side, we'll talk about water rights. So the city owns 2 water rights. They total about 1,000 acre feet plus 5 cubic feet per second. There's another acronym I forgot. And they vary versus annual versus peak. You also get water, those water rights are delivered to you through the Medford Water Commission, through a purchase agreement you have with them. And there are different restrictions depending on the time of year and the time of day. And that limits your ability to pump water from the Medford Water Commission. If you pump too high, you're going to be drawing down their storage tanks, and they don't want to do that. They want you to use your own storage. So just quick findings on sort of the water use trends in the city. When we look at water use per single-family residential account or per ERU, same thing, it's about 274 gallons per day. Got the minutes on there. That's fairly high. It's not unreasonably high, but it's a slightly higher number, especially in the valley here. Per capita at 163 gallons per day is also a little bit high, kind of moderate. We have some ideas, some theories for that, but it's not a big deal. We're going to talk about some efforts you might want to look at with conservation. Maximum day demand to average day demand, we look at the ratio of that hot summer day compared to the rest of the year, and that ratio is 2.84. Usually in the in the northwest, and so I know we're a little hotter here. Usually that's around 2. So being a almost 3 number is actually quite high, which means you have a lot more irrigation use in the summer. One of the reasons we think that is your water rate structure is tiered for volumetric use, but there's not a very high penalty per se, or at least high incentive to use less water when you get over that 5,000 gallons in a month.
When you say 274, what would be normal?
Under 200. Yeah. Water loss, your average is about 12%, and that basically means when you account for your production, take away all your authorized consumption, all your bill data, anything you track for hydrant flushing, it's the amount you don't account for, and it's not necessarily all leakage, it's just not accounted for. And we aim for 10%, that's the industry standard. So 12% isn't unreasonable, I've seen much worse too, that's not to say it's bad. And the city does have a very proactive program to go after leakage. So it's not to say anything's wrong, but that's something to aim for, lowering that number.
When you look at 16 and 17, you average out 11.5% unaccounted for. We're changing out a lot of meters, like Bear Lake Estate, there's a huge meter, 210 units down there, we just changed out that meter.
Yes.
We also changed out all of our large meters in the city. I think it's less of a leakage problem than a metering problem.
Absolutely.
We had a huge metering problem with the water coming in from the Metro Water Commission, and they were charging us too much, because we had too much water coming in. And going to town, we had a valve open. We're just giving water with the bypass valve open, putting water where it's coming, and our wastage from the chemical water was like 17-18%. So we could figure out why. So we went out there, and you have the pump station experiment over in Medford, coming all the way like 6 miles. We had someone go out there with like a sensor, a hearing sensor, to hear for leaks over there. We went through the entire city almost with listening for leaks everywhere that we could. We couldn't find it. In the report, you talk about AC pipe and sometimes leaking. And I had the thought of it leaking like a sulfur hose. But it really doesn't do that, does it? Does it just come through the pipe and just leak?
It's usually at joints or potential breaks where there's been corrosion or eroded pipe. I mean, these pipes are under a lot of pressure. The point you made about the meter calibration is very important, and the meters coming into the city and out of the city were all corrected as of 2014, which is why all the data we're using is 2015 and on, because we can't really trust that data. And I totally agree, we couldn't use it. So a lot of it is meter calibration of large meters, and that is something the city does regularly, is calibrate large meters. There's definitely some unaccounted for water with all the other smaller size meters that you can't calibrate on a regular basis.
Well, but I learned a lot, so more for 10% for 2000.
I bet it will be, yeah.
Thanks for the Yeah.
Great. So jumping into demand projections, like I said, the data prior to 2015 wasn't really accurate, so we've only shown a little 3-year historical data point there. But what we like to do is project a full range of demand projections. We talk to your planning department to talk about all the areas of growth you're looking at in your comprehensive plan. We also, the low projection reflects that a lot of those areas are undevelopable, and reflects I think it reflects current day density assumptions, and the high projection assumes a slightly higher density assumption. So all this came from the planning department. It shows quite a large range. The big range is due to growth in the PH5 and PH10 urban reserves. So those are big areas that are bringing a lot of customers. Max day demand projections follow a very similar trend, but again, this is using 2.6 on the low and 3.0 times the average day demand to kind of capture that full range for max day demand. So as you can see, by 2070, we might get close to 6 MGD at the very high. But this is why we recommend you update your master plans every 5 to 10 years, because demands change all the time. As development changes, as decisions of where development will occur, maybe you'd end up, serving Charlotte and customers in the future. Everything could change. So it's important to do these at different points in time as you go. So just some key points, the demands capture the full range of potential growth. There's relatively low efficient water use per person per customer, nothing to be alarmed about. The city has high peaking factors, which, we'll talk about, but it can't indicate what you want to do is incentivize more conservation and your irrigation water use. Your outdoor water use is where maybe the inefficiencies are existing. As I said, continue to update demand projections to reflect actual growth and development locations in the future. And then we'll talk about water conservation. Here we go. So, conservation measures. So, believe it or not, the city actually does a lot of conservation measures already. These are the state-required best management practices. Having an annual water audit that means you track your production versus your consumption and track what that water loss is. Having a fully metered system is actually a really important best management practice. Regular meter testing and replacement. Having a rate structure at all. So not all utilities have these, I guess is what the point is, and you guys are checking all these boxes. Having a leak detection program, and having some form of public education, whether that's in your consumer confidence reports or on your website. I forget exactly what you guys have, but you checked all these boxes. Then on the enhanced conservation measure side, you actually also meet the requirement for a tiered rate structure, because you do have a volumetric charge, and you have more of an aggressive leak detection and repair program. So you meet all these requirements. Some of the other requirements that are recommended, so there are some that you are required to do because you have an active water right now, but you either have to show it's just not feasible or adopt some measure of some form of it. So there are a few that we decided weren't really realistic for the city to administer. These requirements we worked out with Ray. These were what we recommended. So distributing conservation kits, those are like water faucet nozzles and low flow shower heads and things like that. You can distribute them at public events or just have them available at City Hall. Reviewing your rate structure to further incentivize conservation. The requirement is to have an incentivizing structure. So Ray thought this was something you guys would want to do, even though you do have a somewhat tiered structure already. And then implementing code requirements for high efficiency appliances. This is all for new development, irrigation systems, and the prohibition of waste.
That's where it is,
Exactly. So nothing real imposing on your current customers, nothing that takes a lot of administrative staff effort, which I know is a challenge with smaller communities. I know that there are regional efforts to do conservation. Medford spearheading one. There's been a Southern Oregon Municipal Water User Group conservation strategy. So there's definitely regional efforts out there too. Okay, chapter 3 is water curtailment. So curtailment is different than conservation because this is needed for a potential water supply shortage. This is what you implement for cases of long-term drought, contamination, natural disasters, major facility failures that go over for a longer period of time. And I'm not going to go over all those stages unless you would like to ask questions about them. But they go from low severity up to high severity and the kinds of things you implement. Because you're a wholesale water purchaser from the Medford Water Commission, you are required to have the same or more aggressive curtailment actions than Medford Water Commission. So we recommended you adopt their curtailment plan, and we included it in the water management and conservation plan.
Good, it makes sense.
It does.
Do what they do.
It's easy for you, yeah. Talent is reviewing it line by line and deciding, but you guys are easy, just adopt them.
We're not going there.
Okay, the last chapter in this plan is the water supply evaluation. The first part of this is water rights capacity evaluation. So it's kind of a complicated graph. This is your average day demand projections compared to your water rights and your Medford purchase agreement amount. So The line you want to be looking at is the top red line, or any of the demand projection lines, red, orange, and yellow, compared to that top dashed line, which is your water rights. And the city has ample water rights, according to these projections, until the year 2060, and possibly much longer if your demands are lower than that highest projection. There's a regional water rights supply strategy happening right now with Medford Water Commission and the other cities that purchase water from Medford. So out of that will come a regional strategy for whose rights do we want to protect next, who needs the water, who paid for what earlier. And the idea is that this is kind of the first time there's been this collaborative effort among all the cities, and Medford's coming to the table too, and trying to work together. So I'm really excited about it, and I hope you guys help continue to support that if you see it come up your way. And then, so Medford Purchase Agreement, speaking of Medford Water Commission, so this is a little tricky. They create every 5 years, they set a rate for you to meet, right, the pumping rate. And in the off-peak months, October through April, the dark blue line shows Medford's number for Phoenix right now. And the dashed orange line is your projected average day demand. So you would meet that in 2033, but this gets updated every 5 years, so that's nothing to be alarmed at. But when you look at the peak day limitations, which is the dark blue line on the graph here, and you look at your max day demand projections, you're already exceeding it now. And it's a little tricky because they measure it based on all the tap users, so Talent, Ashland, Phoenix, all your use together. They look at the meter at Experiment Road and the tap meter together. So you're not getting like penalties for this. But had a lot of conversations with Ray about how to adjust your pumping. First of all, how to adjust the number from Medford Water Commission, and then how to adjust pumping rates so that you aren't exceeding it. And so we're working on getting under contract for a tap water master plan. I'm happy to answer questions about that. But between Talent, Ashland, and Phoenix, that looks at the infrastructure, the pumping, the operations, all of it together, which has never been done yet, and try to figure out what to give to Medford, what to ask from Medford for all this, because Phoenix is very dependent on what Ashland and Talent want to. It all runs through your system.
Basically pumping in the middle of the night, filling your reservoirs, and during peak time. Pumping the reservoirs.
Yeah, and actually right now, you guys don't pump at all in those morning hours, just to avoid any penalty at all. You don't have to do it that way, you can just pump a constant rate. Anyway, we're trying to figure out all those nuances. And it's hard to do without involving Talent and Ashland's data as well.
But doesn't Talent do the same thing because they pump off-peak hours, and then Ashland doesn't pump at all unless they need to?
Right. But Talent sometimes when they don't peak, they don't pump in that morning period, and then they pump to fill the reservoir later to recover from that period that they missed. They end up pulling storage from your system. And yeah, and Ray doesn't like that at all. I'm sure Nikki doesn't either.
Yeah.
So they're pulling from your storage. So they're working on equalizing their pumping to be constant, so they don't peak off your system too. Yeah. Okay, so key points on the supply analysis. You have adequate water rights until, I guess, it was 2060 and beyond. Recommend changes to the Medford Water Commission purchase agreement. And I've talked with Brad Taylor, he's the general manager there, and he says, just give us your recommendation. What do you need? What do you want? So that's what we hope to have out of the tap water master plan. The regional booster pump station, that's the main supply that comes from the tap supply to you, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but the city has about 3 MGD out of the full tap capacity, and theoretically, I should say, but that needs to be built. And before we know what that cost is going to be to you and exactly how much you need to expand the pump station, we need to look at what Talent wants and what Ashland wants to. So that's why we're doing that out of the tap master plan as well. We also recommend emergency supply from Ashland. This is an interesting concept because now the tap system connects all the way to Ashland, and they have excess water in the winter that can gravity feed all the way down to Phoenix. So no pumping costs. So Talent's interested in it, Ashland's interested. We want to look at it as a possibility for you because it's always good to have a second supply source. Oh yeah, they have a powerhouse, they generate power off the reservoir. The new treatment plant is even high enough. All of it will be high enough elevation to flow all the way backwards. Yeah, there's maybe a few minor infrastructure improvements to make. Yeah, this would be great. And then lastly, a new Medford Water Commission supply connection in North Phoenix Road. So as your development expands into PH5 and PH10, you're getting closer and closer to the Medford system up there. And I'll have maps later on here, but that's a great opportunity to get another supply source from Medford, tied into all the development, piping, and networks that's going to be happening out that direction.
I think that's a question regarding that. The first part of the master plan, I'll ask you now. Would it be possible to connect into the Medford water system and join them expanding their supply capacity? Because they're going to be developing MD5, right? I'm not sure if they're already filled out and have enough supply capacity. But if they do, or if they don't, join them and add supply capacity. Is it less than your own second reservoir, east side or K5? Why not just join them, link in, and pay them something to supply enough with water through the PH5 and PH10, because right near MD10. And so they would could save money together. Had that thought. Would you?
I think that's great. And I think it's time now for those conversations to start. We didn't have all that background and ability to have those conversations as part of the master plan, but I think this is the time for it.
But is Medford already built out for capacity, or does it have capacity, storage capacity?
I have to check when they just completed their master plan, and I know they didn't assume this demand on their system up there. So they do have a pump station, I believe, that has to boost water to that area, to the elevation that you would draw from.
Yeah.
So you'd have to pay some pumping rate or some capacity in that. And ideally, you wouldn't use storage because I guess it depends on, you will need storage. So if it's a joint project, that would be ideal.
Do you think Medford would need more storage, like a coal mine road or up there?
I don't recall off the top of my head, but there are master plans online if you ever want to.
Last question on this. Why does it cost $2 million to tap into Medford
Oh.
pipe?
That's a big unknown, that's why. We didn't know how much that would cost. It's metering, it's tapping into their infrastructure, it's the cost of using their infrastructure.
So $2 million is a wide guess.
It is. It's a long term, yep, it's a big white guess. Yeah. Oh, and the last point was abandoning the experiment booster pump station, the whole experimentation road supply system. And I'll talk a little bit about that from the hydraulic perspective. And that's why we really want to move to a second Medford supply in the northeast Phoenix area.
I mean, you could ask the question, being a water geek, but the experimentation, when you're running that, you're pumping water, the electric cost is really, really, really high.
Right.
But to me, it seemed like you want to really tap into the tap more and disable, not to be able to just have experiment on the site, just in case you need that source of water, and then just maybe run it, how often we get it, once a month, once a quarter, just to test it, make sure it's working, but don't pump anymore from experiment, saving also costs. That savings could go towards paying partial debt service on revenue bonds we pay for reservoirs.
Yeah.
Is it possible to not use experimentation? Just test it?
I believe in the problem is when TAP was built, Phoenix didn't assume its full supply capacity from TAP. It assumed, well, we have 1,000 gallons per minute from Experiment Station Road, so we don't need that much in TAP. So you would need to buy in more capacity in the TAP system from the other partners or expanding it, or, building another supply source.
You did that with a tap.
Yeah, that's what we want to do for you. Look at it with you guys. Yeah. Yeah, there's some kind of elegant solutions from that old supply system. That's actually pretty cool, but with the TAP system online, it's actually not very helpful. So that's it for the water management and conservation plan. And now, so that's all more on the supply and demand side. Now it's more on infrastructure.
Page 177, yes, page 177. You mentioned that the city does not request green light water. But
Right.
that's probably just, you don't have anything called green light water, right?
Yeah, right. That's correct. But I don't know how that will change once this regional water rights strategy comes about. So I'm deferring it at this point, at this submittal of this water management conservation plan. I'm saying you're not requesting green light water.
What is green light water?
It's their term for you're actively asking to perfect a water right, and you're submitting this plan as a requirement of that water right.
You also mentioned those comments in here from Medford Board Commissioner Callan Ashland in Appendix A. So Appendix A and B are the exact same in the report. They're duplicate.
Oh,
And there's
okay.
no comments here. So
Oh.
I think we have to modify this.
That's an error, yeah. We
You
should
might want to make a
double
note
check
that
that.
the two appendixes are the exact same thing. And Appendix A, comment I don't think is in there, period.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll check those.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so part of the requirement is that you submit these to your neighboring water utilities. So
I think
they have a
we did
30-day
comments, but it's not in the
comment
report.
period, yeah. So we got comments from Ashland and Medford, and they corrected a few little things, and those are updated. Thank you for pointing that out.
Anybody else have questions on the conservation plan? So that's not good, right?
No, it's great. It's great
I'm
information.
gonna ask them while she's here. I usually would do this among staff, but I didn't have time.
That's fine. Happy to answer questions. Okay, Water Master Plan. There are 6 chapters. I know you're probably most interested in the financial analysis at the end and the rate impacts. And I just want to give the justification for how we get there to begin with. I think my job is a lot easier to show here are all the recommendations from a best management practice standpoint, but industry standards, and then your job is much harder where you have to fit in how do these costs fit in with all the other things we're balancing in the budget we have. So I understand it's painful sometimes to hear all these high dollars. Okay, so Chapter 1, Intro and Existing System. Just for those of you that don't know the water system super well, what we've been talking about, the red line is the Experiment Station Road supply system, which was Phoenix's original supply connection from Medford, and it is over 6 miles of PVC pipe. It is boosted twice at the Experiment Booster Pump Station and then again into the city. Because where it terminates into 2 storage tanks, they're actually pretty low elevation, so they wouldn't give you any water pressure if you try to get it right out of those, so it's pumped again. And the green line is the tap water supply pipeline. It's 24-inch, and it connects Highway 99. The RBPS on that map is Regional Booster Pump Station. So that's the pump station that boosts water to Phoenix and then on to Talent. That water goes to your East Side Reservoir, which is all built at the same time. And the East Side Reservoir is at the appropriate hydraulic grade line, which is the pressure to supply most of your customers. And then in the city, you have several miles of pipe of different material type, and I won't go through all of these, but it's very, very well networked. We make what's called a hydraulic profile that shows how water is moved. So the Medford water is at a lower pressure, it's boosted up. You can see there at the Experiment Station Road pump station, it pumps to the 2 Shop 1 and Shop 2 reservoirs, and that's where it is pumped again at the Shop BPS. So just a few key points here. Your system is very typical, very common of small municipal water systems in the Northwest. It's well managed, well maintained, but similar problems around as everyone else. That's aging infrastructure. In particular, the shop reservoirs and pump stations are old and they're aging. The Experiment Station Road system is an old supply. It's working, but when Matthias has to make decisions on how to update it or maintain it, it gets challenging. And when you are so far away from current day standards, it's hard to make decisions on what to invest in it. And then, like we've been talking about, the system is a little overly complex. It's not complex, but it's more complex than it needs to be. So because of these challenging hydraulics, for example, The tap water supply system could feed you guys all day long, but you have storage in the shop tanks. You can't just let water sit in a tank. It'll get old and create water quality problems. You have to turn it over. So then you have to pump out of it to maintain that water quality. So then you are pumping twice. You're forced to do it twice. So you're incurring a lot of pumping costs. And then lastly, you have a good amount of AC pipe, asbestos cement pipe, which is again very consistent around the area. But we're hopefully replacing that consistently. Ductile iron is the preferred type of pipe. PVC is fine as well. Asbestos we want to move away from.
They still make it.
As far as I know. Okay, policies and regulations. I just wanted to touch on key points that might pertain to the council. Well, this may not so much, but continuing implementation of the cross-connection control program. This is what protects the water supply from all your private end users. Updating the comprehensive plan, public facilities element, to reflect the updated water system. Some of the language is a bit old and it doesn't reflect the tap system. Consider adopting a policy for a secondary supply source. And lastly, adopting the Oregon Resilience Plan guidelines for water system seismic resilience. I'm not sure if this will officially become a requirement, but the Oregon Resilience Plan does have guidelines for water systems. They are very aggressive, having water available to critical customers within 24 hours after a catastrophic event. But they have 50 years to work on that. So that's the idea. And I'll probably come back to you and talk to you about it when we do the seismic plan. Okay, I'm just going to keep moving along, okay? We already went over demand projections, so we can check that off. So Chapter 4, System Analysis. I'm going to skip this too. So we talked about not being met the water purchase agreement and the operational complexity. We have a hydraulically calibrated model of your whole system that we evaluate all the pressures and fire flows at every hydrant in the system. The city looks fine from a pressure and fire flow perspective. The only time if you see your master plan, you see a bunch of red dots on there, don't be alarmed. They often represent nodes in the system that aren't actual hydrants. All the recommendations we put in here address every problem in the system. And then a lot of the problems are because of new fire flow requirements. So the system was built to handle 750 gallons per minute for residents. Now it's 1,500 gallons per minute. And the fire department just assumes those are considered existing non-conforming. The point is, when you go to replace those pipes, put in a bigger one in the future. Okay, so those are all in the CIP, they're P1 through P6, there's a bunch of projects in there. Those are long-term. And we consider these low priority. We evaluate all your pump stations and future pumping needs. So we are going to recommend abandoning the shop booster pump station eventually when you can abandon that whole system. The Skyline booster pump station, which serves that just little area up on the hill, its fire flow pump is again meeting an older standard, so when and if it needs to be replaced, put in a larger fire pump. The area up on the other side of I-5, up on the hill, looks to develop, that it will require a pump station. That would be development driven. And then there's an area out in PH5 that is at too high of an elevation for your system to serve it by gravity, so we would need a pump station too. So that's all these are saying. From a storage perspective, you're required to handle operational storage, which is just how much your tanks fluctuate day to day, fire storage, and emergency storage within all your tanks. So the city has 2.85 million gallons of storage right now, and we look at all the way through all the demands we see through build out to see when you might have a deficiency. And right now we're seeing a deficiency between the years 2025 and 2040, depending on how you look at the criteria. And I can talk about that forever, but I won't waste your time on it. But there is a potential for a deficiency, and we do recommend you do something by the year 2040.
One question regarding this chart, it's table one, talk about growth scenarios.
Yes.
And it talks about your high growth scenario, and you mentioned parts of page 10 in the graph that's in the water master plan. The same graph in the conservation plan mentions page 5. I think it's a notice that doesn't even mention page 5.
Okay.
So I think, it's an important document that we gotta use for a long time. Just want to let you know that page 5 should be in the chart.
So if it's not, I will double check that. That is supposed to show what we assumed that for each particular planning period. And so earlier on, we were assuming partial development of some of those urban reserves, but by the end, we assumed full development. So I'll double check that table, but it should eventually show all of page 5 and all of page 10.
I think it does, within 2025, we can move somewhat to page 5, when we have page 5.
Oh, I see. So you're saying by 2025, page 5 should be served at some capacity.
Absolutely.
Okay. And that's not reflected on that?
It's not reflected in this graph, but it's reflected in the conservation.
Oh,
The
okay.
exact same graph, but this is the page 5.
Okay, good. We'll check that
That's
in the water master plan.
Graph 1.1.
Thank you.
Correct.
I know which table it is, so, okay. Okay, so with storage, we do eventually recommend abandoning the shop reservoirs as well because of their age. This is at least long-term. So if that was to come offline, and considering we need new storage, we're looking at a 3 million gallon tank. We looked at several options for where to put this, and the one that we all landed on was up on Campbell Road to serve the growth up in that area.
Let's think of a 3 million gallon tank over on the east side of the front reservoir. It's something that's tight enough.
Yes.
Just right side by side, you get a $1 million gallon tank. Just put a 3 million gallon tank right there for the entire system, including page 5 and page 10.
That worked too. We evaluated that too.
And then we're thinking of the tanks of the shop, less pumping, more gravity. Would that work?
That it would. We tested it hydraulically. It would work just fine. So it was just a matter of preference. I believe this choice made sense because there was going to be piping all up in that area anyway, and the connection to Medford would be nice for it to terminate into that storage reservoir up in that area. But it would work hydraulically either way. So when it comes time to build the tank, you can reevaluate this. You can evaluate building half of that capacity to start and adding another one in. So this isn't the final word. It's just sometime in the future, and we want to budget for it now. That's what's needed. Yeah, we don't get to a too refined level in the master plans. It's more about let's get you prepared for what's coming.
Yep.
And then when you get there, get more detail. Okay, so like I said, additional storage between 2025 2040. We're recommending a 3 million gallon tank to replace the lost volume of the shops. And location can be to be determined, but this is what we're recommending. And for the shop reservoirs, at least for the short term, we are recommending assessing their seismic performance and debating whether it's worth retrofitting them to keep them online a little longer, and how long do you want them to last. Okay, I'm sorry if I'm taking a lot of your time here. Okay. Okay, good. So capital improvement plan. Piping is touched on some of this. P1 through P6 are all those low priority fire flow improvements. Most of those are long-term. Ray identified one project in the short term that was concurrent with the road project, so it made sense to do it sooner. P7 is an annual budget for AC pipe replacement. It's $150,000 per year. We actually lowered that after we looked at all the financing, and it could be more, but we're trying to keep it more realistic.
We just do that as we have projects. And we're going to work on the street, you can work down the street, and you maintain the pipe.
Yeah.
Like on land.
And it's great to have a budget item there ready to go for, and allocated as it works for the road projects.
Just for council information, a couple years back, we redid Rose Street in front of high school, but we didn't have the funds to change out the pipe. So that's why you have a reserve building up. When you come to a project, whether it's an emerging project or something you're really planning out, you want to have the funds there to to replace the pipe when the road's all dug up. Now we have roads with AC pipe on it, and it's going to replace your
Right. Another project identified was T1, the Camp Baker Road, T for transmission, larger diameter pipe, 12-inch pipe that connects, I forget, at least to Hilsinger and all the way to Culver, but I think it goes past Hilsinger. Actually, the map on here will show it in a second. And then the last one, T2, this really big dollar item, is all the transmission main looping in the PH5 area. So this map kind of shows what that looks like. And this is just the transmission piping. Who knows how development would occur? You know, this is just a placeholder for now. And T1 shows the extent of the Campbell Road pipe. And all the other little pipe projects on there are those fire flow projects, you know, as needed in the future. Storage, we estimated about $5 million for that 3 million gallon tank. That's using a lot of recent estimates on tanks, so they're not cheap. So it's good to start planning for that. Also on all of these charts, you can see the SDC eligibility percentage that we've put on here. That's what share is needed for future growth. And what's not on there is what the existing customers would pay for.
Yeah. What's the economy scale? Not taking into account the acquisition. In our best interest to do a 3 million gallon tank, if they have to real estate versus when we
I-
that $5 million.
I think it is, but there's also the balance of, you'll probably need 1.5 sooner than you need the 3, and you might end up with a tank too big, and you might have water quality challenges.
Right.
So there's economy of scale just from construction, but from operation, that's a different question.
Okay.
I don't know that off the top of my head, but we probably want to do cost benefit analysis or something to confirm. Any other questions? Okay. Pump stations, so here are the pump stations we talked about. The first one was updating Skyline Pump Station if and when it ever needs to be replaced with a fire pump. PS2 is fully development-borne cost, is what we're assuming. It's that area above the East Reservoir that'd be fully for new customers in that area only. And then the new pump station up at PH5, so long-term from now, we didn't bother putting it in the CIP. Supply, a few things to point out here. S1, S2 are about your SCADA system. That's the operation management system.
I got a question on S2. We just updated our SCADA system. Maybe we can last year. Why would we have to update it? That's 2020.
Well, we're trying to do a plan, a 20-year
Got it.
replacement
Okay.
schedule. They do, that infrastructure
Got it.
it's aging. The $2 million for S3, New Medford Water Supply Connection, that is just a placeholder for what it would take. And we, like I said, this is when the negotiations need to happen. You know, I'm looking at this now and I'm not understanding why there says 178,000 in the short term. I think that might be an error.
Just replace the 2 million with 1.
That's an error for the short term, yeah, you can ignore that. Okay. It's a long-term allocation, and the point is to, as a placeholder for when that comes. S4, increasing the regional booster pump station capacity. And S5, we haven't talked about, but ODOT is replacing your bridge here in Phoenix, and the TAP pipeline has to be relocated because of it. So a lot of times these projects come in and you don't have any time to plan ahead, but there's a immediate need to move the pipe. So Talent, Ashland, Phoenix are all putting this in their budget to do what they have to do to move the pipe.
Or if you look relocated, I mean, it's going down the middle of the road.
Yeah.
Or under the water.
I think you can either hang it on the bridge or go under the creek, and I think hanging it on the bridge is the latest decision.
So it's going to be the same place, you just temporarily relocate the pipe
But it can't be out of service, so they have to completely rebuild it, relocate it. And I think because of the bridge too, it can't be where it is. I'm sorry, I don't know enough about it right now, but.
All right.
Yeah.
Where do you put it?
Yeah,
Gotta stay
I
the
think,
same
they've
place.
looked at a few options. I just don't, I'm not part of it, that project right now. Yep. Okay, so that's for supply. Here's a quick picture of that. At least for over on the east side where we're talking about a supply connection from Medford, there'd be a meter. Ideally, that water would terminate into a tank, and then that could gravity feed into your system. So that's kind of how that is set up.
So you skip over a couple items on the CIP. There's one for $500,000 to update the master plan.
Oh, yeah.
We just paid $97,000 to do the whole plan. To do an update, you have $500,000.
It's $100,000 per master plan, and you need them every 5 years, so that's why.
Okay. That's a lot of money.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. If we can figure out a way to just do an update or a small piece of it, we will. That's just for budgeting.
Okay.
Every 10 years is what I said, actually, so not every 5, every 10 years. Water management conservation plans, we're assuming you do those at the same time as your master plans. There's only going to be $10,000 per year because they kind of use the same data. Tap water master plan update, we want to make this more of a regular thing. And those are going to cost a little more because it's a regional effort. And there's going to be way more meetings and coordination. So we're putting a $50,000 budget item for each city. Seismic resilience plan, RS4. We were able to get you guys a grant to cover the cost of that. So we're going to be working under that grant. The last two are about the shop reservoirs, doing a seismic analysis of them to see their performance, and then doing cost-benefit analysis if you want to keep them or not. So overall, there's actually not that many infrastructure projects here. I mean, obviously, we've got a big storage tank to look out in the future towards, but from a piping perspective, pumping perspective, the city's actually in pretty good shape. Lots of studies, and then we've got the supply and policy update, emergency supply and other policy updates we talked about. Okay, last part, financial analysis. So Hansford Economic Consulting did the financial analysis. Catherine Hansford obviously is not here. I'll do my best to represent her data and her recommendations. So her approach is, the approach is to focus on the next 20 years only, minimize debt funding by raising rates in SDCs. So that's why you see the rates going up and the SDCs going up, is to avoid the debt funding. Maintaining reserves of at least 3 months of operating expenses. And we assumed low to average growth to be conservative because your revenues really depend on that growth. And if you overestimate your growth, you're overestimating the revenue. So it's important to be conservative there. So Calvin Hansford took the CIP and looked at the next 20 years only. So when it was a $22 million total, it's only $15 million for the next 20 years, which is still plenty of money. The allocation of costs, so here's where she took the SDC eligibility that we identified and put that as far as those costs go in the SDC column, so those are borne by future customers, and all the rest of the costs are borne by existing customers. So that's kind of the breakdown of what went to rates and what went to SDCs. The SDC recommendation is a pretty big jump. It follows your SDC methodology, with the exception of the ratio, how it changes by meter size. So first of all, what this is showing is a jump from a SDC of $3,602 for 5/8 inch by 3/4 inch meter to $7,606, which is a high SDC number.
And you can add in the dimension order, most part of it.
Yes.
So for new development here in Phoenix, it's not just architecture cost $27,700 and it's $1,600 dimension order. It comes out to $7,200 per home. You're going to have to charge just for water.
Right.
Now you got to think in the back of your mind, is that going to be prohibitive to the builders? And they're going to say, hey, I'm not going to build it, I'm going to build it and buy it instead.
Right. And that, I agree. I mean, it's very high, and it's the calculation that comes out based on the new infrastructure needed to serve all your new customers. And then to point out that the rates do vary using the ratio method that the cities had in the past. When you go up in meter size, when you follow the American Water Works Association methodology, they don't go up as much as you go up in meter size. So that's kind of interesting to point out. And we usually recommend the AWWA method, so I think we put that recommendation in the master plan. And I should have pointed out here too that this rate study is not a end-all, this is what you need to do. This is a requirement of your master plan to show the affordability of all the projects we've identified. So you don't have to adopt this. This is not a presentation to get you to adopt these rates, obviously. But this is what it would cost to do all the work that we've identified as needed. So that's where you guys have the tough decision of what to do about it.
Really good suggestion.
Okay, on the water rates, so the findings here, several projects need to be debt funded to keep those rates from big jumps. So there were 3 projects that stood out: that Campbell Road pipeline project, obviously the new storage tank, and the new connection from Medford Water Commission. If and when those happen, those would need debt funding. They're too big to be borne by rates. Also, when looking at all the forecasting models of operations, your revenue requirements are projected to increase. Those are based on operating expenses going up, including increases from Medford. And overall, it resulted in a 5.25% rate increase per year for the next 10 years. So
We've been doing 1.5 every year, except the last 2 years, because we had to charge more because Medford raised the rates a lot. What's the difference between the 5.25 and 1.5 is not reverberating?
yeah, I mean, other cities see a 10% first few years. You know, that this isn't horrible. I mean, you did ask Catherine to even it out because we don't like customers don't like the ups and downs. So this was, and I'll show you the next graph. It kind of shows you how the projected water fund balances with that even growth in rates. You know, depending on when you spend the money, the first year of debt funding of T1 goes down. You know, so it balances out over time. And I'll show you how those impact typical customer. So your current fee rate for, this is all, you always talk about single-family residential, the smallest meter. Current rates are $37.21, and then the tiered rates above that for volumetric charges. So as part of the analysis, Catherine evaluated 2 different rate structure options. One is a more aggressive tiered rate structure, and I didn't give all the details here, but it goes back to that peak day to average day ratio, and it tries to shave off those the customers that are using a lot of extra water in the summer. It incentivizes them to use less. So that's one recommendation.
You have a double-edged sword. They use less money, you get more, less revenue. They use less water, you have less.
That's the crux in the Northwest utilities. Nobody wants to do conservation because it means less revenue. But you always have to cover your base costs with your base revenue. That's the goal. But that is the tricky part when you do conservation. And then she also evaluated doing a seasonal structure where you actually bill more in the summer than you do in the winter, but that would be very administratively complex, so we didn't recommend it. So, you know, for typical user, 6,000 gallons per month, from current year to year 10 is a big jump. It does look a good amount, pretty big water rate increase. And the next slide is how this compares to your neighbors. So I'm working with the City of Talent right now. They're looking at increasing theirs. Ashland, and I'm working on their master plan. That's probably going to go up, but not that much. They've already done a big rate increase from their treatment plant. And Medford isn't on here because they're way too cheap to compare to. They own the water source. They don't have to pay a lot. So it's a gravity system.
Isn't Talent different rate increases pretty soon?
Yeah, Talent has not increased their rates in many years. So they are looking at a big jump. And I just presented to their council a few weeks ago on that too, so.
And that to be compared to the town. I think their water fund is less healthy than ours because we tend to raise the rates a little bit every single year.
Yeah.
No big jumps, but when you don't raise your rates a little bit each year, people are gonna get hit with a huge increase and raising just a huge
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, they're making decisions now to catch up and how to get back on track. Yep. So the key points here, again, raising rates in SDCs helps you minimize debt funding, but those are some heavy rates to incur, heavy increases to incur. You want to annually review available cash and adjust these as needed. Performing a cost of service study to ensure customers are paying a fair share of operating costs. And, you know, regardless of what you do, 3.5% per year covers inflation. So 1.5% covers something, but 3.5% per year is what the construction cost index typically is. So it's reflective of construction.
A couple years back, we had a decent jump, I think like 5 or 6%, the 1.5% per year after that for a while. Last couple years, great.
Yep. Okay, and with that, I am done. Thank you for all your time. Any other questions? Great, yeah. You can ask Aaron to get me in touch if you need anything else, so, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Anybody need to take a break, or are we okay? Anybody want a break, or are we okay? Next up is public comments. There's no one here, surprisingly so. He's staff. Very valuable staff. We have the consent.
Thank you.
We have the consent agenda. I'm going to pull the appointment of Parks and Recreation Committee application just for a moment. I can comment on that. But anybody else want to pull anything from the consent agenda? I'll accept the motion to approve the consent agenda except for item 2. Any more discussion? Those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any passes unanimously. On the appointment of Parks and Recreation Committee applications, I really want to thank Nancy Peterson, Sandy Wine, and Sarah Collins for volunteering. By the way, all women committee, just like the Bee City Committee. I know sometimes I don't know where this comes from, but we're talking about disparaging women volunteers, but we love women volunteers. We want to keep women volunteers coming in. Documents like the Parks Commission. We appreciate all these ladies volunteering. And with that, I'll put the motion to approve. Unless there's more discussion on that. I'll put the motion to approve item number 2 of the consent agenda from the Parks and Recreation Committee.
Did I say that right? Not bad.
Parks and activity.
Oh.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you. Unfinished business, review of city manager evaluation. We gotta pick a time to, you want to do executive session or?
Yeah, that's fine by me. Or, yeah, I would like to.
Sarah called me today and she wanted to not have it during her working hours. She wanted to push it as late in the afternoon as possible or even executive session. So we could do this before city council meeting also, or not the city council meeting, but let's put this on the agenda to go wait half a 6-month period and just do the right about when to schedule the executive session.
Yeah. We don't have fear in this kind of town. That was easy.
So May 20th, 5:30?
Yeah.
Next item up for discussion is new business discussion of an integrated pest management program. I got a bunch of comments on this, but I'm just gonna say what the process I thought we could do is one to hear from staff, so we can hear about it, and then an opening comment from council, and then public comments, but there are none. Then more council discussion. So, Aaron, do you want to comment on this item?
Agenda report, it basically states that we use pesticides and herbicides, typically we spot spray. I'm sorry, I'm not loud enough? Okay. We typically spray pathways. We don't spray the grass section of the park, putting full line and a sprayer, that sort of thing. So we're doing limited spraying of herbicides. When we don't use backpack sprayer, we have a certified or licensed person who does that. We were down a couple of public works employees, and one of those employees was kind of our go-to person for herbicide application. She was certainly our certified person. So in lieu of that, we would be using a backpack sprayer, more of the spot spray. So anyway, there are a lot of IPMs out there, integrated pest management plans. A lot of cities and counties do have them. What we use, and there's been a little bit of maybe the term has been miscommunicated that we use the county's plan. It's not so much the county's plan as we adhere to best practices, and that is found in our Fairfield Greenland Riparian Corridor long-term vegetation management plan, and that's a plan that was developed through RVCOG, and we haven't formally adopted that as a city plan for our parks and whatnot, but we are a partner with that plan when it comes to Fairfield Green. So that's just kind of our best management practice. So in any event, I didn't have a lot of direction from the council as to what this topic, how this conversation might go, whether or not the council wanted to move forward with a more formal plan, or wanted to talk more about what it is that we do. So it was on the agenda because council asked for it to be on the agenda, but I didn't come with a particular discussion, I guess.
I'll make a few comments and go on the table, chat about it. But like Aaron says, we do use a pest management plan, but we're very stingy in our application for that we do. Anyone can go up to Public Works and see the spraying records. They're all there for anyone to see. I took a look at it. In 2018, in the parks, we sprayed less than 2 gallons of herbicide in all our parks for the entire year of 2018. And for the entire city, we sprayed 5 gallons. That's it. We don't do a lot of spraying. Bill came into the office today at the City Hall. We were worried about his pets because he's often sprayed the grass with herbicide, and we don't. So it just so surprising. Less than 2 gallons for all the parks in 2018. So we do it very, very sparingly. One time Ray went to SMU seminar regarding spraying, and they were like, "What are you doing here? You don't even do any spraying." And then he asked them, "What SMU does spraying to the grass?" And said, "Good. SMU sprays in their grass, herbicide, that type of stuff. We don't do that." They're surprised at how little spraying that we do, and we also do preventative measures. We try to prevent these from happening in the first place. If you look at the exit 24, we come off exit 24 towards Waze, so going back to the car wash, there's a little triangle area. One of the triangle area is some fabric to help prevent weeds from coming in the first place. When you look at the couplet, at the end of the couplet, there's a lot of times a sign there that mentions a dinner, it can be dinner or other events. Our guy took away all the rocks, the soil there, and then we put a mesh of black fabric under there to help prevent weeds in the first place. We're always trying to mitigate weeds coming in the first place. Some of our guys actually pull weeds sometimes. Like my house is over Culver Park, I see guys out there sometimes actually pulling weeds by hand. We do very little spraying. We're always trying to mitigate the weeds coming in the first place. Callan's Public Works Director sent us a letter, or sent a letter over to Jacksonville regarding their process. And in the letter, it says that Callan is currently in a learning period gathering data through trial and error on what most effective non-chemical control methods are. The staff has experimented with multiple organic products. Unfortunately, there has been little evidence that these organic herbicides actually kill vegetation unless it has caught the infancy stage of growth. They're also trying a steamer. They actually do a steamer, costs $20,000 a machine, and they steam weeds. The reason I bring that up is it might be good to wait to see how Callan's performance is and learn from their experimentation on what works and what doesn't work. And it's going to take maybe a year or so before they can give us some better information on what works and what doesn't work. Long term, I really don't want to get into discussions of science on herbicides, synthetic versus organic. When we start going into the science, there's the EPA and other world bodies which say it's safe. Some world bodies say it's not safe. Some scientists say it's not safe. Many scientists say it does get safe. It is safe. But we don't want to, I don't think we really want to get into a battle of science regarding this particular issue. Also, we might hear things come up regarding juries awarding money to a citizen. There are two cases in San Francisco that awarded money to people because they believe that herbicides have caused injury to that individual. I don't think we really want to get into a battle of cases because we can look at the cases that were for, cases against. I don't think it's the right way to go. And what I wanted to encourage everyone to do is hopefully not micromanage staff, but meet with staff and just see what the ramifications are of putting in an IPM that's as stringent as some other communities. What's it going to cost? How many extra staff members do we have to hire? How much equipment do we have to purchase? Just kind of check out the cost, just meet with staff and see how they feel about it. And the community, if they want to help, I mean, we can always use funds. We're a small town, we don't have a lot of money. If the public, maybe outside our area, maybe with talent or passion on a come to our city and promote something, they can help fund the spray or help pull weeds. I try to get people to get two communities together, one for Blue Heron and one for Culver, to go out there and pull weeds. I didn't get very far, but we can have volunteers that can pull weeds instead of pulling, instead of spraying. And lastly, I think we're all very cognizant of the type of concerns out there. We all care about pets, children, everybody, and we're as caring as everybody else. That's my opening statement on that. I'm just going to go around the table and look at what you guys said.
I'd be curious what Councilman Warren has to say. This is sort of your area, isn't it? You know a lot about these things. Do you have any insight for us? Oh, no, I mean, I've talked to Stuart about this before, and you're pretty well educated on it, so you might as well start there.
My degree is in environmental geology, so the problems environment. Everything else like that. I was also lucky enough to spend a lot of time with Ray, talking about stuff that Public Works does. I was very impressed to see the things that Public Works does. And honestly, that's why, I'm supportive of creating some sort of a plan, because we already do a great job of creating a plan to show what we do. It costs a lot of money, it's not going to change the way we do anything, it's just going to be a plan right there. People see these things, they're going to worry about it, and say, here's the plan, this is what we utilize, this is best based off of this science, based off of this data. But, I mean, I also think this whole thing's done when we have to work with it, that's the job. I have seen some things that have troubled me in the past. I think that was because they hadn't really planned out a whole I think raise guidance, those best practices will really well follow. Now that they're gone, let's say that the is going to run out of doing things, but it's probably just if not better rate, but you know, having these commands put in place are correct best practices. That's how we make our public service.
I ask you. So you're saying we don't necessarily need to change our practices, but simply document and sort of why we're doing it, the way we're doing it, and that in itself will prove we're doing it the right way.
Yeah, and I think a best practice is to minimize the sprain versus profit, right?
It sounds like it's pretty minimal.
Money, it saves brain hospitals on things. Right. So it is a best practice. So I think having some sort of that language in there is useful. A lot of it. Are we going to be able to go to no spray if it's not going to happen? There are a lot of things that we just, as a place in the Northwest, we're going to have to utilize spray. One thing that I'm really passionate about is we're very there's no way we can get a black bear without somehow. But how do you do it is hard. Like we're talking about people like Freshwater Trust, for example. They utilize basically Roundup as no longer oil in there, so they can apply it in spot application. It doesn't get everywhere. This is Freshwater Trust. So I think that there's application use for it, but it's follows.
You told me once that it wasn't necessarily. You told me once that it wasn't necessarily the chemical itself that was not applied.
Well, that's the overspray. Right? The chemical itself is by nature it destroys it. But chemical, the molecular structure actually tracks electrons.
That's what it's for, right?
But Roundup is going to utilize this there's a certain oil they add to it, so it sticks. And that oil comes from nitrogen oxide in the environment, so it sticks around for longer than it needs to, right? Spot you don't have to do big swaths as much as possible going and being smart about that. So you're not getting a lot of this, you know, A, extra chemical being used for it off, B, super toxic environment that's going around it. C, I think there's definitely a big use for pesticides and herbicides. I don't use them, that's my choice, and I recognize that. I also recognize that we're a municipality, you know, understaffed as it is. We don't have the funds to increase the staffing that we have to go zero spray. But I think we can and do the best that we can for us. I think putting that kind of things into a plan is exactly what this body's job is.
No, I think he's on, because I was kind of thinking along what you were thinking, but I wanted to make sure I was thinking the smart stuff, right? And I think, you know, well, seriously, I think if we document this and we make a plan and we're organized about it, we can show what we're doing and why we're doing it. I think the people with the most concerns will at least be, you know, eased a little bit, you know.
You know, kind of respond to that comment, I think it's right on. This whole conversation started, you know, in the Parks and Rec. And in my opinion, it got completely blown way out of proportion. I'm not going to name the people involved, but I'll tell you it's not members of that commission. It could have been very much different and such a wrestling. Like I said, it got to a point that I think having a plan for fitness.
Right. And we are where we are. We got to do the plan.
I think it makes sense. I don't think it's going to be really primary for staff necessarily. A lot of it's just being aware. And the other thing is we don't have to have a time limit to it, right? We don't need to produce this report by next week. Right? There's no reason to have this done by like tomorrow. We can say, let's have it by 2020.
Are we doing the name brand
get the same active ingredient.
Like plastic, just like
So the chemistry background between the Roundup, this is a pretty, I mean, it's similar but different, right?
Yeah, so what happened with Roundup is they actually lost their patent on it, so now there's these other brands making it. They're not using that patent that I was talking about. I mean, it's like, so the glyphosate was the active ingredient. It's not available for use.
So my point is, why would we not have the citizens show that this is what we are using, this is the chemical breakdown. We are not advocating for the Roundup, we are using a lesser, and we do the thing we're doing. Get it out there, let them know exactly what we're doing, and mark, we're setting up a little sign that we're setting up, right? We're gonna spray a day before, 2 days before. Absolutely.
And after too.
That's kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying, is if it's all written down,
And if they,
boom, you put it down. There you go.
yeah, we're not using Roundup, we're using this, it's less, boom.
I think we put the signs out 24 hours before, but keep them there for a couple of days afterwards.
We do.
Is that right?
That's correct.
24 hours before, and then 2 days after? Okay.
That's very good. So,
And, I mean, a lot of that's basically what IP would come up with, right? We, you know, so Talents, for example, like, they went really far into the thing, which I applaud them for trying to do it. You know, I think it's a good move for them. I don't think it's right for Phoenix at this point in time, but if you look through what they did, I mean, they spell out exactly which chemicals they use. Each one of those chemicals has to go through a committee, the committee has to do the research and then approve it. So, I mean, they were really into this thing, right? But I think saying, okay, we use glyphosate.
here it is, there's a breakdown. The other thing is, I do have a connection with the Phoenix Talent School District, and I did talk to some of the members on what issues if this has come up with them. They haven't had a lot of discussion about this. They are doing similar studies. They're using the Talent, I believe the Talent Elementary School, there's a part back there where they're doing it, and they were using a lot of the organics, and they were not having very good success with them at all.
Very
Because my question with them is, if Talent passes it, is that going to affect the Phoenix Talent School, or the Talent School District, if they're going to have to change theirs?
No, this is a city.
Right, but I was just bringing up the conversation, and that's what it is.
When I do my travels to the community, I've never had someone come up to me and say, hey, I got a concern with this, the herbicide spraying in parks. It's never come up once. In our Parks Master Plan, people were able to give comments. There's one comment in the Parks Master Plan regarding a concern on this issue, like a recommendation to mitigate the spraying. So I don't think it's a real hot button issue in the community in general, but for some people, it's really hot button
Okay,
issue.
that one question, you know, so it's a big question, and we'll just write it down, and
I think this is going to definitely increase amongst our community as well.
Councilor Vermillion.
I just wanted to ask Stuart, what do you think, without spraying, if that was left undone, what are the side effects, consequences that would come from that? Do you think noxious weeds would just get more of a foothold and go crazy? Is that why we have to spray every once in a while, like you say? Like star thistle
How
or
in depth do you want me to get into this conversation?
Yeah, well, a little. Like how, I know that many people have IPMs, they end up spraying once or twice a year or something just to get that. But I also talked to some people that have had some really ugly invasive plants show up on their property. Like nothing takes care of it. It does pods, it does seeds, and it does fingerlings. And their recommendation to kill it was to spray it with Roundup and cover it with black plastic for the entire summer is the only thing that was going to take it. But so if that wasn't taken care of, that could spread lots of places. So there could be bad things coming without spraying.
Well, and that's why I say, you know, I don't think it's realistic for us to not spray. Like, I recognize that we have these really nasty invasive species. Blackberry is one of them. I mean, puncture vine's another one, and puncture vine's one that Ray was able to like really get a hold of.
Over at Blue Heron, they did a great job.
And he did it without using pesticides or herbicides. He actually did it mechanically. But that stuff is so intense that you kind of have to do as much as you can to get rid of it, right? But like star thistle, for example, the best way to get rid of star thistle is to water it. It's a thistle. It doesn't
plant, kind of.
exactly. So it's all, you know,
So
everything's a little different.
Yeah, nice to have that. Okay. Thank you.
Well, I wrote down a couple more words just to mention this. You know,
I wrote down contentment with reasonable compromises. And hopefully the community, I think almost everybody will be content with a reasonable compromise. And from what I hear from council, you just want to memorialize what we're talking about tonight into a plan. And just kind of, the plan would mimic what we're currently, or just write down what we're currently doing. And just keep
Absolutely.
doing what we're doing now.
Absolutely.
And the nice thing about that too is it always allows us to revisit the plan, right? We can always, if someone comes in with a concern about the plan, we can revisit the plan, talk about it, and see where we need to go from there.
Is that enough instruction for staff?
It sounds like the council is saying they want an IPM within the next year or so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the IPM schedule? Busy. Well, I don't think it has to be anything fancy, it just,
No,
and it would just reflect what we're currently doing, so.
I think that's what you'll see is a document that states this is what we do. And, you know, if the council wants to make policy decisions around that, then we can modify it.
All right, we good?
We're good.
Okay, thank you. Don't miss anything on the agenda. We're up to staff reports. City Attorney.
Nothing for me.
All right.
Any problems?
You don't want to comment on the Mueller report and get, no?
Yeah, got that all squared away.
Attorney? Okay, City Manager?
Well, I was hoping to have more of an update on the urban growth boundary expansion or kind of a timeline for you. I wanted to talk to Evan a little bit more about that. He was out last week at a training that was a week long and took an exam to become a certified floodplain manager. So because of that, I didn't really have as good of an opportunity to speak with him about it. But that's something I'll probably email out to you guys. I want to let you guys know that staff is cognizant that process has been taking a long time. And so we're going to be pushing a little harder to get that done, or at least get council an update on an expected time frame. I've also been working with Mark West, the engineer that's been working on our North Church Street project. So hopefully we'll have bid docs available shortly. I was supposed to see those by the end of today, but I didn't. So that'll be one of my first calls tomorrow. So I don't know if you have any other questions or concerns for me, but that's my updated report right now.
I have a question.
Sure.
Where are we at on Church Street?
Where are we at on Church Street? I'll give them a call tomorrow and
Well, we're waiting for the documents from Marquez. Once the documents are from Marquez, then we have the documents that we can use to put it out to bid.
here's how I would put it. It's my expectation that the bid doc